Yeah. Speaker view for the back. Still check that. Should be.
Yeah, you're on.
Hey Julia, how's it going? Did you recover from a long week?
I sure did.
When did y'all come back? Saturday or Friday?
No, we came back Friday.
Commissioner Alvarez, I'm kind of disappointed in your entrance today. No mariachis.
The mariachis are in my head. I hear mariachi music all the time. Scary. I got something for next year already. What? It is. Alberto, you have any games this week?
Yes, sir. I will on Friday. I'll be at the who's playing at Dripping. Oh, Alamo Heights Marble Falls game.
Okay.
That should be interesting. And Alamo Heights has one of the best mascots in the state. The
Who are
Mules.
the mas- I'm refereeing the Edna Lagos.
Like, oh, Edna has a really good team too.
Yeah, that's going to be in Seguin at 1 o'clock Friday.
Yep. Edna, the alma mater of Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Randy, are you in timeout? You can join us over here. They got you in timeout. How's your son doing? Good.
He does. Yes. Yes. It's close.
Huh? Yeah. Yep, 6 months.
And mom's tall. So there's such a great.
Yeah. I was walking down to the back.
Oh, because you're just so used to always coming.
Yeah, one down there. Halfway down the hall.
Agree with me today. Oh, yeah, you're going the wrong way. We started laughing. Well, it makes it look good. Yeah. Jane. Everybody's home now. Morning, Chairman. Everybody's home now. Yes, sir.
All right, good morning, everyone. This meeting is called to order. Has anyone signed up for public comment? All right, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. On agenda item 3, no cases.
No, there are no agenda item 3 cases.
Thank you.
All right. Let's consider tax liability cases under agenda item 4. No tax cases on docket 46 or 47.
That is correct. There are no tax liability cases on docket 46 or 47.
Fair housing cases on agenda item 5.
No, there are no fair housing cases on docket 46 or 47.
All right, let's move to agenda item 6. We have no wage claim cases on docket 46 and none on docket 47. Pulled for additional discussion.
There are no wage claim cases pulled on either docket 46 or 47, but you should have received the short form dissent lists.
I move we accept staff recommendations on the remaining wage claim cases on docket 46 and docket 47.
I second the motion except for those cases on which I'm dissenting as reflected on the wage claim short form dissent list for docket 46 and 47.
No, I concur with the chairman's motion, except for cases on which I'm dissenting as reflected in the wage claim short form dissent list for docket 46 and 47.
Motion passes with the exceptions noted. Let's move to agenda item 7, consideration of unemployment insurance cases on docket 46. Please proceed when you're ready.
You're ready?
Case number 2650637, Commissioner Alvarez.
The decision is not supportable. The claimant received ongoing payments from the employer in exchange for a non-disclosure and non-compete agreement. The agreement specifically states that the payments are in consideration of the claimant's agreement not to take a position with the competitor for 1 year and other restrictive covenants. The claimant was also required to submit monthly reports to the employer detailing any income and sources from which she received it, as the payments the claimant received are in exchange for restrictive covenants and ongoing activities. They are not disqualifying as severance under the Act. Reverse AT, severance eligible, no overpayment.
The appeal tribunal decision should be modified. The claimant received severance payments that did not fall under any of the non-disqualifying factors found in section 207.049B of the Act. The claimant also stated that she began receiving her severance pay on May 15, 2020. The claimant further explained that the payments were provided to her every 2 weeks and that the payment she received did not state what weeks it was intending to cover. Accordingly, the claimant should be disqualified from benefits only for the weeks in which she received her severance pay. As such, we should modify the AT decision, severance pay disqualifications from, there are a number of them, May 10th, 2020 to May 16th, 2020, May 14th, 2020 to May 30th, 2020, June 7th, 2020 to June 13th, 2020, June 21st, 2020 to June 27th, 2020. And lastly, July 5th, 2020 to July 11th, 2020. And recalculate the overpayment. In the alternative, I would also agree to a rehearing in this case for the parties to submit pay documentation that shows exactly what dates the claimant received severance pay during the period of May 10th 2020 through July 18th, 2020.
Reverse the 18, no severance, disqualification, no overpayment, memo to investigate unreported earnings.
Mr. Chairman, could you please repeat your vote for me?
Reverse the 18, no severance, disqualification, no overpayment, memo to investigate unreported earnings.
Thank you.
With short form dissent.
I have your short form dissent, Commissioner Dimerson.
Case number 2670861, Commissioner Alvarez.
The decision is not supportable. The claimant was discharged for allowing others to use her password at the instruction of her supervisor. The record indicates, the record includes statements from others and the claimant's supervisor verifying the claimant's testimony. The claimant was placed in a no-win situation. She could either violate the employer's policy by following her supervisor's instructions or engage in insubordinate behavior by refusing her supervisor's instructions. As the claimant's only violation was in following her supervisor's instructions, the claimant's actions do not rise to the level of misconduct. Reverse the AT, no misconduct, chargeback.
We should affirm the AT decision. The claimant was aware and acknowledged the employer's policy which prohibit sharing of usernames and passwords. The claimant was terminated when she shared her password with other employees at the workplace. Although the claimant alleged that she shared her password per the instructions of her supervisor, the employer's testimony dictated that the supervisor did not have the authority to allow employees to violate their policy. Because the claimant knowingly shared her password after she was aware of the employer's policy prohibiting such action, the claimant's conduct constituted misconduct connected with the work. Hence, we should affirm the AT decision, misconduct, no chargeback.
Affirm the AT, misconduct, no chargeback.
Short form dissent.
I have your short form dissent, Commissioner Alvarez.
Case number 2670891, Commissioner Alvarez.
Can you read the case number again?
Yep.
Case number 2670891.
Okay, mine is a little
1 minute.
Yeah.
Okay, let's change that to 26. Case number 2682891.
Oh, that's better.
Last two 9-1s.
891. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Commissioner Alvarez.
The claimant has provided a new statement from her manager, which she acquired after the appeal tribunal hearing. The statement details complications associated with the job offered to the claimant and may help to establish that the offered work was not suitable. As such, the claimant has met the requirements for granting the motion for rehearing. Grant the claimant's motion for rehearing.
We should deny the claimant's motion for rehearing. While the claimant offers new evidence, she has failed to provide a compelling reason for not offering this information sooner. In addition, the prior record established that the claimant refused to return to work when recalled because she did not feel comfortable returning due to COVID, not because of the hours of pay. As such, since the claimant has not met the 3 required criteria, we must deny her motion for rehearing and leave the underlying commission decision in full force and effect.
Deny the motion for rehearing.
Short form dissent.
I have your short form dissent, Commissioner Alvarez.
Yes, ma'am.
Case number 2790836, Commissioner Alvarez.
The appeal tribunal decision should be affirmed. The claimant last worked for the employer on March 10, 2020 as a substitute teacher. The employer went on spring break as of March 16, 2020. Due to the pandemic, the employer canceled school immediately following spring break from March 23, 2020 to May 27, 2020. And the claimant was not paid while classes were canceled. While the claimant did not work March 11th through March 13th prior to spring break, the employer's testimony was insufficient to establish that work was available to the claimant prior to spring break. The employer's witness admitted that she did not know why the claimant did not work during those 3 days prior to spring break. There is no evidence that the claimant refused available work. As such, the commission should affirm appeal tribunal decision that the claimant was separated due to the COVID-19 pandemic, a natural disaster. No misconduct, no reimbursing employer.
We should reverse the AT decision. The employer, a school district, posted job assignments for substitute teachers on a daily basis. The claimant was responsible for accepting job assignments when she wanted to work. The claimant last worked for the employer on March 10th, 2020. The claimant had continued work available to her through the end of that week and the week thereafter. Since the claimant had continued available work, her failure to accept the employer's open assignments constituted a voluntary quit without good cause connected with the work. Therefore, we should reverse the AT decision, voluntary leaving, reimburse an employer, not bill, adequate employer response.
Affirm the AT, no misconduct, bill reimbursement employer.
Short form dissent.
I have your short form dissent, Commissioner Emerson.
Case number 2843283, Commissioner Alvarez.
The decision is not supportable. Although the hearing officer failed to take any testimony from the claimant as to her earnings, the evidence indicates that the claimant was reporting her earnings in a week that she earned them. The employer witness stated explicitly that when she reported the claimant's earnings to the commission, she just took the biweekly amounts and divided them by half, rather than reporting the earnings in the weeks they were actually earned. Additionally, the employer's witness stated that the $120 in earnings she reported for the benefit week ending September 5th, 2020, were actually earned in the prior week. As a result of the employer's failure to accurately report the claimant's earnings, she has been held subject to an overpayment. The earnings adjustment should be corrected to reflect $120 in earnings for the benefit week ending July 4th, 2020, $60 earnings for the benefit week ending July 11th, 2020, $120 in earnings for the benefit week ending July 18th, 2020, and $0 in earnings for the benefit week ending September 5th, 2020. Recalculate the overpayment. If the earnings are not adjusted as described, this case should be reheard since the hearing officer took no testimony from the claimant about her correct earnings and therefore failed to adequately develop the record.
We should affirm the appeal tribunal decision because the earnings were not correctly reported, of finding that there was an earning adjustment, overpayment is appropriate. However, since the employer has now provided the correct amounts, a recalculation of the overpayment is proper. We should affirm the AT decision, earnings adjustment, overpayment, recalculate.
Reverse the AT, no earnings adjustment, overpayment.
Short form dissent. Correction, Ms. Gonzalez, can I go back on my decision? Can I ask for clarification on the chair's vote?
Yes, Mr. Chairman voted no earnings. Reverse the decision. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, there's no earnings adjustment, overpayment.
I would agree with the chairman.
Thank you.
Short form dissent.
I have your short form dissent, Commissioner Emerson.
Thank you.
Case number 2913580, Commissioner Emerson.
We should modify the AT decision. First, I agree that the claimant filed a timely appeal. Concerning the job separation, the claimant was on an approved leave of absence until May 8, 2021. The claimant was advised to provide additional documentation for the extension of his leave. When the claimant did not provide the requisite documentation, the employer initiated the claimant's termination paperwork. Although the employer continued to protect the claimant's job until June 3rd, 2021, the claimant was eventually discharged when he failed to provide the requisite paperwork. Since the claimant failed to take affirmative steps to protect his job, the claimant's conduct constituted misconduct connected with the work. Hence, we should modify the AT decision, timely claimant appeal, misconduct, no chargeback, adequate employer response. In the alternative, since the available testimony in conjunction with the claimant's firsthand testimony dictate that the claimant's separation arose from the effects of COVID-19, the claimant should be qualified for benefits and the employer's account should be protected from charge based on a medically verifiable illness. Therefore, we should modify the AT decision, timely claimant appeal, no misconduct, no chargeback, MBI.
Ms. Gonzalez, I would agree with Commissioner Demerson to modify timely appeal, no misconduct, no chargeback, MBI.
Timely claimant appeal, no misconduct, no chargeback, MBI. I agree with that.
Thank you. We have a unanimous vote. And that is the conclusion of the cases pulled for additional discussion on docket 46. You should have received the short form dissents for docket 46.
I move we accept staff recommendations on the remaining UI cases on docket 46.
Chairman, I second the motion except for those cases of which I'm dissenting as reflected on the UI short form dissent list for docket 46.
I concur with the chairman's motion, except for the cases on which I'm dissenting as reflected in the UI short form dissent list for docket 46.
Motion passes with the exceptions noted.
We will move on to docket 47.
Case number 2442355, Commissioner Alvarez.
The claimant has provided sworn testimony that she did not receive the appeal tribunal decision in the mail. Further, the claimant has had problems receiving the mail at her address. Since the claimant did not receive the determination, her appeal should be deemed timely and the case resubmitted for merits. Deem claimant appeal timely and resubmit.
We should dismiss the claimant's appeal as late. The claimant participated in the AT hearing in October of 2019. Yet despite alleging that she did not receive the AT decision, she never followed up with the Texas Workforce Commission to determine the outcome of the appeal. Because the claimant sat idly by for almost a year and a half, the claimant has failed to provide credible and persuasive evidence to rebut the presumption of receipt. Consequently, the claimant's appeal is not timely, and we do not have jurisdiction to consider the underlying merits. We should therefore dismiss the claimant's commission appeal as late and leave the underlying AT decision in full force and effect.
Late commission appeal, the AT decision remains in full force and effect.
Short form dissent.
I have your short form dissent, Commissioner Alvarez.
Case number 2614605, Commissioner Dimerson.
The appeal tribunal decision should be modified. The claimant filed a valid claim. As to the job separation, the claimant instructed the driver to leave the keys of the customer's vehicle in the gas tank. The vehicle was left at its location overnight. These actions were against the employer's procedures and potentially could have placed the property of another in jeopardy, with a possible loss ranging from $45,000 to $60,000. The customer was furious about the situation and could have resulted in a loss of business to the employer. Moreover, the employer's testimony regarding the events that took place in its policies should hold greater weight since the claimant did not provide testimony to the contrary. In essence, secondhand testimony outweighs no-hand testimony. As such, the claimant's actions constituted work-connected misconduct. We should therefore modify the AT decision. The claimant filed a valid claim, misconduct, no chargeback, adequate employer response.
The decision should be affirmed. The claimant filed a valid claim regarding the job separation. The claimant was in communication with the customer about the delivery of their vehicle. The claimant instructed the delivery driver to leave the vehicle, which was a customary practice. Nothing happened to the vehicle. The employer testified that the claimant should have contacted management for a resolution. However, there's no indication that this was the employer's policy or that the information was communicated to the claimant. The claimant had no prior warnings for similar issues. As such, the employer has not shown misconduct. Affirm the AT valid claim, no misconduct, chargeback.
Reverse the AT, valid claim, misconduct, no chargeback, adequate employer response.
Short form dissent.
I have your short form dissent, Commissioner Alvarez.
Case number 2701332, Commissioner Dimerson.
The appeal tribunal decision should be affirmed. The claimant called the incorrect number for the hearing because she did not understand the whole thing. This is tantamount to misreading the hearing notice since the claimant had the hearing packet in her possession and failed to call the correct number to participate. This does not constitute good cause for missing the hearing. The underlying merits of the case support a finding that the claimant quit without work-connected good cause, and I maintain my vote from the case's prior docket. The claimant did not have good cause for her non-appearance, voluntary leaving, no chargeback. The alternative, even if the claimant did have good cause to miss the AT1, the record still supports disqualification. The claimant quit for two reasons: working shifts alone and concern about a lack of PPE. The employer credibly testified that it had PPE available. Regarding working shifts alone, the claimant told her supervisor of this concern sometimes in February of 2020. Painting the facts in the light most favorable to the claimant, she quit about a month and a half later in mid-March. The record indicates that the claimant was working alone due to the employer being short-staffed. Hiring new personnel is not an overnight process. It is not unreasonable to conclude that the employer was not afforded enough of an opportunity to install more personnel to assist the claimant. Accordingly, the claimant quit without work-connected good cause. We should therefore modify the AT decision. The claimant had good cause for her non-appearance, voluntary leaving, no chargeback.
The decision is not supportable. Due to staffing issues, the claimant was scheduled to work alone, caring for 37 patients. The claimant brought the matter to the employer's attention and no action was taken to address the issue. The employer admitted 3 employees are required for each shift. The claimant had good cause connected with the work to quit. Reverse the AT, good cause, no voluntary leaving, chargeback.
Reverse the AT, claimant established good cause for AT1, no voluntary leaving, chargeback.
Short form dissent.
I have your short form dissent, Commissioner Dimerson.
Case number 2710349, Commissioner Dimerson.
This case should be remanded to the appeal tribunal. The AT took no testimony regarding the claimant's non-appearance at the AT1. And as a consequence, the employer was deprived of its ability to cross-examine the claimant on that issue, if it so chose. This due process issue should be remedied. Accordingly, we should remand the case to take testimony from the claimant regarding his non-appearance at AT1.
The decision should be affirmed. The claimant established good cause because he started a new job and was unable to attend the hearing. Regarding the job separation, the employer alleged that the claimant called coworkers Sweetie and Honey, and that there was a performance issue with one of his visits. The claimant credibly denied the allegations under oath, and the employer did not provide firsthand testimony. As such, the employer has not shown misconduct. Affirm the AT, good cause for claimant, no misconduct, and bill employer.
Remand.
Would you like the short form dissent?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Gonzalez.
I have that.
Case number 2722105, Commissioner Dimerson.
The appeal tribunal decision should be modified. I do not contest the timeliness issue. I also do not contest the AT ruling that the claimant did not have reasonable assurance from March 15th, 2020 through March 21st, 2020. As to the other reasonable assurance rulings, the claimant tendered her resignation to the employer on October 4th, 2020. This was after the employer's school year had begun. As the claimant signed a letter of reasonable assurance for the 2020 through 2021 school year, wage suppression is appropriate for the employer's summer break. We should therefore modify the AT decision. Timely claimant appeal. The claimant did not have reasonable assurance from March 15th, 2020 through March 21st, 2020. The claimant did have reasonable assurance from May 31st, 2020 through August 15th, 2020. Recalculate overpayment. In the alternative, I would also support a vote for a rehearing in this case to directly question the employer as to whether assignments were available once the fall 2020 semester began.
The AT decision should be affirmed. The claimant's appeal from the reasonable assurance determination was correctly deemed timely because this case falls within the timeliness exceptions for cases involving wage credits. Regarding the reasonable assurance issue, the claimant has not worked for the employer since March 10, 2020. The employer provided a letter to the commission in which they admit that the employer is unable to provide assignments to the claimant and that work is not currently available. Although the record was not well developed at this point, the evidence indicates that when the 2020 to 2021 school term began, the employer was only engaged in virtual learning and almost no substitute teaching assignments available. The claimant therefore did not have reasonable assurance. Affirm the AT timely claimant appeal, reasonable assurance eligible from March 15, 2020 to March 21st, 2020, no overpayment, reasonable assurance eligible beginning May 31st, 2020, void reasonable assurance ineligible closure effective August 16, 2020.
Modify the AT, timely claimant appeal. Claimant did not have reasonable assurance March 15, 2020 through March 21st, 2020. Claimant had reasonable assurance from May 31st, 2020 through August 15, 2020. Recalculate overpayment.
Short form dissent.
Thank you. I have your short form dissent, Commissioner Alvarez.
Case number 2751380, Commissioner Demerson.
The commission should grant a rehearing in this case. While the claimant stated that the only phone and computer he had were cut off because they belonged to the employer, they are not the only phone or computer that exists. The record in this case needs to be further developed to certain what options were available to the claimant for him to file his claim. I.e., could he have used a neighbor's phone? Could he have made a trip to a local workforce solutions office and filed his claim there? As such, we should rehear the case, this case, to determine what efforts the claimant made to file his claim when he was unemployed.
The AT decision should be reversed. The claimant was furloughed by his employer for 1 week, the week beginning November 29, 2020. His phone and computer access were terminated for that week by his employer. He tried to contact the commission to file a claim as soon as he was available to do so, but it took a couple of weeks to do so. The claimant has established adequate cause for his additional claim to be backdated. Reverse the AT additional claim backdated to effective date of November 29, 2020.
Affirm the AT, backdating denied.
What was the chairman's vote?
He affirmed the AT to backdate the claim.
Okay, short form dissent.
Thank you. I have your short form dissent, Commissioner Demerson.
Let me, 1 second.
Yeah, I need to clarify the chairman's vote.
Oh, I'm
please.
sorry.
Backdating denied.
I'm sorry. What was the date, sir?
It was denied.
Yes. Okay. All right. I apologize, Commissioner Demerson. The chairman's vote is not to
Yeah,
backdate.
so
it's
the chairman's
yes.
vote was to deny, then I'm going to agree with the chairman's vote.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
My apologies.
That's okay.
And Ms. Gonzalez, I'll short form dissent.
Thank you.
Case number 2802534, Commissioner Alvarez.
The decision should be modified. The claimant established good cause for her non-appearance because she did not receive the hearing notice. Regarding the job separation, the claimant's client paused services because of the pandemic. As the client had not ended services, the claimant expected to return to work for the client, and the employer was aware of the situation. When it became apparent that she wouldn't be returning to work for the claimant requested additional work from the employer, but nothing was available. The employer provided a witness statement that the claimant turned down offered work. However, the claimant provided a firsthand denial, which carries greater weight than the employer's witness statement. As such, the claimant was separated when no further work was available and not due to any misconduct. Modify the AT, good cause, no misconduct, no overpayment.
We should affirm the appeal tribunal decision. I do not dispute the good cause finding. As to the job separation, this was initiated by the claimant when she failed to contact the employer for a new assignment as required by policy after a previous assignment ended. The claimant then rejected a new assignment the employer offered her a few days later. Thus, in accordance with commission precedent, because the claimant's actions clearly notified the employer that the employment relationship had ended, and she failed to establish good cause connected with the work for quitting, the disqualification and resulting overpayment are appropriate. We should affirm the AT decision. The claimant had good cause for a non-appearance, voluntary leaving, overpayment of $5,193.
Modify the AT, claimant established good cause for AT1, no misconduct, disaster, no overpayment.
Short form dissent.
Thank you, Commissioner Demerson. I have your short form dissent.
Excuse me, I need to clarify the rationale. Mr. Chairman, you voted it was disaster impacted.
Yes.
Commissioner Alvarez, your vote was not on that rationale. You used a different rationale.
We can agree with the disaster.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Case number 2812910, Commissioner Dimerson.
We should reverse the AT decision. The claimant last worked for the employer on September 7th, 2019. Per the employer's sworn testimony, employees akin to the claimant had the opportunity to work events of their choosing. Although the employer consistently tried notifying the claimant about available work events, the claimant failed to respond to the employer's text notifications. Since the claimant had continued work with the employer, the claimant was not laid off due to a lack of available work. As such, the employer's account should not be charged. We should reverse the AT decision, no chargeback.
The AT decision should be affirmed. The claimant worked at a special event for the employer on one day. There was no evidence that further work was offered to the claimant after that one-day event. She was therefore laid off due to the lack of work. Affirm the AT, charge the employer's account.
Reverse the AT, no chargeback.
Short form dissent.
I have your short form dissent, Commissioner Alvarez.
Thank you.
Case number 2816402, Commissioner Alvarez.
The decision is not supportable. The claimant is the only party to participate in the hearing and provided evidence. The claimant testified she did not receive a reasonable assurance letter from the employer until July 13, 2020. Further, the claimant normally worked summers for the employer and therefore was not in between her normal school terms during the summer. As she is not in between her normal school terms, she should not be found to have reasonable assurance. If my fellow commissioners disagree, then her reasonable assurance period should not start until July 12, 2020, as the employer did not provide her with any reasonable insurance until that week. Reverse the AT, no reasonable assurance.
We should affirm the appeal tribunal decision. Because the claimant received a letter of reasonable assurance, the wage suppression during the summer break is appropriate. Thus, we should affirm the AT decision. The claimant had reasonable assurance from May 31st, 2020 through August 15th, 2020.
Reverse the AT, claimant did not have reasonable assurance.
Short form dissent.
I have your short form dissent, Commissioner Emerson.
Case number 2894569, Commissioner Dimerson.
The appeal tribunal decision should be modified. The claimant remained employed with the named employer until August of 2020. The claimant had also received a final warning earlier in the year in May due to poor job performance. The employer stated that the job performance had to do with customer experience. The claimant stated that there were many changes due to COVID and many customers were upset due to the changes. The claimant further stated that it all had an impact on the customer experience. As such, the claimant should continue to be qualified for benefits and the employer's account should not be charged under disaster analysis. We should therefore modify the AT decision, no misconduct, no chargeback, disaster.
Ms. Gonzalez, I would agree with Commissioner Demerson, modify, no misconduct, no chargeback, disaster.
Agreed.
We have a unanimous decision. Thank you.
Case number 2919130, Commissioner Dimerson.
We should modify the AT decision. The claimant suffered an on-the-job injury. Although the claimant alleged that the injury was not job-related, the available record in conjunction with the claimant's testimony dictate that he suffered from a medical condition. The claimant's medical condition prevented him from effectively performing the functions of the job. Since the claimant's separation was a result of a medically verifiable illness, we should modify the AT decision. Valid initial claim, no misconduct, no chargeback, MVI, no overpayment.
Ms. Gonzalez, I would agree with Commissioner Demerson.
Agreed.
Thank you. We have a unanimous decision.
Case number 2930423, Commissioner Alvarez.
The decision should be modified. Regarding the timeliness issue, after reading the determination, the claimant called TWC. He was told that all he had to do was complete identity verification and then wait 3 weeks to start getting benefits. This instruction was incorrect and caused the claimant to file a late appeal. Therefore, the claimant's appeal should be deemed timely due to agency misinformation. Regarding the job separation, the claimant has issues with addiction and mental health. The stress from the job made these issues worse. The claimant's doctor told the claimant that quitting was a good idea based on the amount of stress the claimant was under. As the claimant's quitting was the result of his medical issue, he should be qualified for benefits and the employer's account protected from charge. Modify the AT, timely appeal, no voluntary leaving, no chargeback, MBI.
We should modify the AT decision. First, I agree that the claimant filed a timely appeal. Concerning the job separation, the claimant quit based on an alleged medical condition. The claimant's doctor had not advised him to quit prior to his separation. Moreover, the claimant failed to show that his medical condition was entirely work-related or that he had attempted to address any job-related concerns prior to quitting. As such, we should modify the AT decision, timely claimant appeal, voluntary leaving, no chargeback.
Modify the AT, timely claimant appeal, voluntary leaving, no chargeback.
Short form dissent.
Thank you. I have your short form dissent, Commissioner Alvarez.
Case number 2937432, Commissioner Alvarez.
The decision is not supportable. The claimant had medical issues for which the employer was no longer willing to provide accommodations. The claimant used all FMLA and time off options she could in an effort to stay employed. The employer has acknowledged they were aware of some of her medical issues. Since the claimant's separation was the result of her medical issues, she should be qualified for benefits. Reverse AT, no voluntary leaving, bill reimbursing employer, void adequate response.
We should modify the appeal tribunal decision. Although the claimant alleges that she quit due to her medical conditions, she has not provided medical documentation of her diagnosis nor evidence that her doctor advised her to quit. In addition, the employer was trying to work with the claimant and offering various accommodations to address her health concerns. Thus, since continuing work was still available for the claimant if she had not quit, we should modify the AT decision. Voluntary leaving, reimbursing employer not billed, sever the adequate response issue.
Modify the AT, voluntary leaving, reimbursing employer not billed, sever adequate response.
Short form dissent.
I have your short form dissent, Commissioner Alvarez.
Thank you.
Case number 2940196, Commissioner Demerson.
The appeal tribunal decision should be modified. The employer testified that the claimant quit without finishing the project she was assigned to do. The employer further rebutted the claimant's contention that there was an agreement that she worked for 1 week. Lastly, the employer stated that continuing work was available had the claimant stayed. The claimant did not establish that the working conditions were intolerable or that she otherwise had good cause connected with the work for quitting. As such, we should modify the AT decision, voluntary leaving, no chargeback, sever adequate response.
The AT decision should be reversed. The claimant was working for the employer on as-needed basis. She was brought in for a 1-week assignment to fill in for another employee who was out on vacation. The claimant worked that week and completed the assignment. The claimant was not aware of any further work after the completion of that assignment. While the employer may have had continuing work for the claimant, the employer never offered the claimant further work beyond that 1-week assignment. As the claimant worked and completed the assignment, the separation was due to a lack of work and the claimant was discharged for reasons other than misconduct connected with the work. Reverse the AT, no misconduct, chargeback, void adequate response.
Reverse the AT, no misconduct, chargeback, void adequate response.
Short form dissent, and I'd like to request a memo to be sent to UIA and OS to investigate the claimant's availability for work.
I have your short form dissent, and we will send that memo.
Thank you.
Case number 2951882, Commissioner Demerson.
We should reverse the appeal tribunal decision. The parties agree that the claimant received a final warning for an absence without notice in August 2020. Although the claimant testified that he was told by his manager to report his absences to a frontline employee, this is contradicted by the claimant's fact-finding statement, where he admitted that the proper procedure for reporting absences was to call his manager. Furthermore, the claimant's allegations that he did not have the opportunity to rebut his no-call/no-show is not credible. Regardless, this incident is not relevant. The claimant was on a final warning at the time of his discharge, and the employer testified that the final incident involved the claimant's tardiness, which occurred after the final warning was issued. Since the claimant admitted to his incidents of tardiness after warnings, the claimant mismanaged his position of employment. We should reverse the AT decision, misconduct, no chargeback, adequate employer response. In the alternative, because the AT focused on the no-call, no-show absence, which resulted in the final warning, and failed to take adequate testimony about the claimant's final incidents of tardiness, we could rehear this case to further develop the record on this issue.
The appeal tribunal decision should be affirmed. The claimant provided firsthand testimony that his supervisor gave him permission to text his lead about absences or tardiness. The employer's witness agreed that the supervisor had the authority to designate the lead as a person that the claimant could contact if he was going to be absent or tardy. The employer's witness also admitted that she did not know what the supervisor had advised the claimant regarding reporting his absences and tardiness. While the employer's witness alleged that texting was against the employer's policies and notice had to be by a phone call, the claimant believed that the supervisor had the authority to allow him to provide notice of his tardiness or absence by text to the lead. The claimant properly texted his lead that he was going to be absent on August 24, 2020 because of a car trouble, and was not a no-call, no-show. The employer therefore incorrectly gave the claimant 3 attendance points for that incident. Per the employer's policy, the claimant should have had only 1 point, as the employer's progressive disciplinary policy for attendance indicates a person is subject to discharge after accumulating 4 points, and the claimant should have only had 1 point. The claimant was discharged for reasons other than misconduct connected with the work. Affirm the appeal tribunal decision, no misconduct, chargeback.
Reverse the AT, misconduct, no chargeback, adequate employer response.
Short form dissent.
I have your short form dissent, Commissioner Alvarez.
Case number 2956489. Commissioner Alvarez.
The appeal tribunal decision should be modified. I agree that the employer filed a timely appeal to the determination dated December 21st, 2020. Regarding the separation, the claimant's wages were reduced by 24% in April 2020 because the employer's business was negatively impacted by the pandemic. While there was discussion about the claimant working a reduced schedule of 4 days per week, to justify the pay cut, the employer never agreed to reduce the claimant's work schedule. While the claimant continued to work under the reduced salary, he tried to negotiate a reduced work schedule or the return of his original salary, as a reduction in pay was solely due to the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the employer's business. The commission should find that the claimant's separation was due to disaster. The claimant had good cause connected with the work to resign in response to the salary reduction. Modify the appeal tribunal decision, timely claim employer appeal, no voluntary leaving, no chargeback, disaster, void adequate response.
We should modify the AT decision. I agree that the employer filed a timely appeal. Concerning the job separation, although the claimant's wages were reduced in April 2020, claimant accepted the employer's wage reduction and continued working until his eventual resignation on October 6, 2020. Since the claimant continued to work for the employer for a period of 6 months after the reduction in his wages, the claimant could be considered as having accepted the change. Hence, the claimant's resignation based on a reduction in wages constitutes a voluntary quit without good cause connected with the work. We should modify the AT decision, timely employer appeal, voluntary leaving, no chargeback, sever adequate employer response. In the alternative, we should modify the AT decision. There is enough evidence in record to support a finding that the claimant's separation occurred under non-disqualifying circumstances due to a disaster. Therefore, we should modify the AT decision, timely employer appeal, no voluntary leaving, no chargeback, disaster, void adequate employer response.
Modify the AT, timely employer appeal, voluntary leaving, no chargeback, sever adequate response.
Ms. Gonzalez, I would agree with Commissioner Demerson's second Option, modify the AT, timely employer appeal, no voluntary leaving, no chargeback, disaster, void, adequate response ruling.
All right, Commissioner Dimmerson, your primary vote was to find the employer's appeal timely, no voluntary leaving, chargeback, sever the adequate response. Is that correct?
Yes. And
Okay.
I'm going to stick with the primary vote.
Short form
And-
dissent.
Mr. Chairman, you agree with that? Is that correct? All right, so we have a majority vote on that. Did you want a short form dissent?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. All right. That is the last of the pulled cases for docket 47. You should have the short form dissents.
I move we accept staff recommendations on the remaining UI cases on docket 47.
I second the motion, except for those cases on which I'm dissenting as reflected on the UI short form dissent list for docket 47.
I concur with the chairman's motion, except for cases on which I'm dissenting as reflected in the UI short form dissent list for docket 47.
The motion passes with the exceptions noted. This brings us to the end of agenda items 3 through 7. Let's take a short break. We'll resume here in a few minutes.
Thank you.
Commissioners, I did want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving.
Well, thank you very much, and the same to you.
Same to you guys.
Happy Thanksgiving to all of you.
All right.
Good try.
Yes, sir.
Are you ready?
Randy is born ready.
I'll give you a list of questions. Whatever you can't answer, I can put it back.
Bring
All
it.
right. All right, we're back. This is agenda item 8. This is a discussion paper on the 2022 unemployment insurance tax rates.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, Mr. Townsend. For the record, Chris Nelson, Chief Financial Officer. TWC tax staff are preparing to issue 2022 unemployment insurance tax rates for employers in December, but there are several rates the commission may consider using their statutory authority to adjust. An employer's tax rate is comprised of 5 individual rates: the general tax, the replenishment tax, obligation assessment, deficit tax, and the employment and training investment assessment. Of those rates, the commission have the authority to adjust 3 of them that we will discuss today: the replenishment tax, the obligation assessment, and the deficit tax. As background, HB 7 of the 87th regular Texas legislative session removes COVID non-effective charges from the general tax. TWC has identified just under 1.3 billion of COVID non-charges applicable for tax year 2022. Half of those would have been applied to the general tax that have now been removed. And I will lay out all 3 rates and then open it up for any commission questions, discussion, or action after that. In the discussion paper, the first tax rate for commission consideration is the replenishment tax. As I mentioned earlier, the other half of the 1.3 billion in COVID non-effective charges are applied to the replenishment tax. And there is no method in statute to remove those COVID non-charges similar to HB 7, but the commission does have the authority to adjust that rate. Without adjustment, I project the replenishment tax rate to be approximately 1.01%. I have laid out 2 options in the discussion paper, but the commission may choose to set a rate not laid out as an option. Option 1 of 0.21% simply sets the rate to the 2020 rate prior to COVID. Option 2 of 0.44% removes COVID non-effective charges from the calculation of the replenishment tax, similar to HB 7's impact on the general tax. The difference in projected tax remittances is approximately 247 million under both options, and I project TWC to be above the floor on October 1st of 2022 under both options. The second rate is the deficit tax rate. On November 8th, 2021, Governor Abbott signed SB 8 of the 3rd special session appropriating up to 7.2 billion in federal funds for TWC to pay off its Title 12 advances and bring the trust fund to the statutory floor on October 1st, 2021. With these funds, there is no longer need to assess a deficit tax, even though TWC was technically below the floor on October 1st, 2021. And I am recommending the commission set the deficit tax to 0 at this point. The third rate is an obligation assessment to cover interest on its Title 12 advances, Title 12 advance balance after September 30th of 2021. In June of 2021, TWC assessed an obligation assessment to cover interest due on September 30th of 2021. TWC paid interest of approximately 8.9 million on September 30th and has approximately 20.7 million in remaining funds from that assessment. I project that we have enough cash to cover any interest accrued until tomorrow, but as of this morning, we are still working with the Texas State Controller's Office and the Texas Treasury to transfer the SB 8 funds so that we may retire our Title 12 advances and lock in the accrued interest. At this point, I cannot confidently say that the transfer will happen in time so that our prior year obligation assessment funds will be sufficient to cover any interest due on September 30th, 2022. Having said that, I would recommend that the commission set an obligation assessment of 0.01% to cover any additional interest due. And if you choose, you could set the replenishment tax by reduce the replenishment tax by corresponding 0.01% on employers as well. A 0.01 assessment would collect approximately $9 million in 2022, and any funds not used to cover interest due would revert back to the trust fund as well. So there is no loss on any funds not used. So That concludes my comments. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this point.
Comments or questions?
Chairman, before I have any, I read my comments, I'd like to hear from both of you. That's okay.
Well, Chris, thanks for the presentation. Thanks for all the past work that you guys have been doing. Excited to see that we have an opportunity to do this in November. I look back at last November and it was, things were a lot different. In response to what's been presented here, the replenishment tax rate at 0.21 that's recommended, and then 0.44 that's been issued to us for consideration. I like the fact of maybe reducing that to 0.20 and then having the obligation assessment set at 0.01. I think our net result there is going to be keeping in line with what we've done in the past. And so I'm thinking along those lines at this particular point.
So talk to me about the difference between on the replenishment tax rate, the difference between 0.21 and 0.44.
The difference in, at least from a revenue standpoint, would be approximately $247 million in additional revenue the 0.44 would collect versus the 0.21.
And so the 0.44 represents, had COVID not been a factor in unemployment benefits and the economy just operated as the economy, we would be thinking 0.44 would be the calculated rate based on economic factors.
That would be
minus COVID.
that would be the estimated rate. Exactly. It basically, it does exactly what HB 7 does to the general tax. It identifies that half of the 1.3 billion COVID non-charges, and it just removes them from the calculation of the replenishment tax as if they didn't exist.
Yeah. Which gets us to at some point in the future when we have to calculate our floor, your projection would be we would be above the floor.
I'm still projecting we would be above the floor on October 1st of 2022.
The 0.44% rate, is that in keeping with the kind of this range that we've seen in the past?
It is. So in the discussion paper, there's an option. I go back to 2017. You can see in 2017, there was a 0.41% replenishment tax, and that was mainly driven by the downward trend of oil prices that drove the unemployment rate higher in 2016 that affected the 2017 rates.
Mm-hmm. And we've seen some, I mean, energy prices are up right now, but we've seen some fluctuating energy prices over the last year or two that would have some sort of economic impact.
Right. Correct. It does not lower it to, prior COVID levels, but it does bring it still back to within a normal range of what you would see of a kind of a maximum range of a replenishment tax that we've seen in recent history.
So I think we have a tendency to sort of want to naturally, I mean, it's human nature. We want to reset things to when things were moving along rapidly, late 2019, January, February 2020. So we have this tendency to think that resetting things back to those levels is our success point. But in reality, my observation is that the tax rate for unemployment for the trust fund, it fluctuates with the economy on this sort of predictable range, and that 0.44 is certainly something that we've seen in that kind of predictable range.
That is true.
So the number of people who are on unemployment benefits right now, it would strike me that is fairly similar to what we saw late 2019, early 2020 prior pandemic. Is that an accurate statement?
That is an accurate statement.
In fact, I think we're only about maybe somewhere between 10 and 20,000 more beneficiaries today than we were in February 2019 or February 2020. Is that fairly accurate?
Yeah. I look at it from the perspective of cash going out the door. And when you look at the amount of state unemployment benefits going out the door in the month of October and November, we are definitely approaching prior COVID levels, or really at prior COVID levels right now.
So the unemployment rate is high. I think that's due to people who self-identify as unemployed. They're not receiving benefits, but they have not found either the job they're looking for or a job in their area. There's a reason they're not working. The fact that they're saying they're unemployed just because they're not receiving unemployment benefits doesn't mean they're not unemployed. And so when I look at the numbers across the board, the number of Texans who are working for wages, the number of people who are receiving unemployment benefits, those both seem to be very analogous to what we saw February 2020, which was kind of our high point in employment. The difference in the unemployment then, which was around 3.5, and now, which is around 5.5, seems to be the number of people who are self-reporting as unemployed. They're not in our systems beyond perhaps they may be doing some training or something. So the numbers are kind of resetting themselves back to what we saw 2019, 2020 levels. And you've presented an option here that's reminiscent of those levels. You say that both the 0.21% and the 0.44% would get us to where we would be compliant with the floor on the next measurement of the floor.
Yes.
And so the difference being the 0.44 represents kind of the economic situation that we're in, all the different things that have pulled at the economy minus the designated COVID pull on the economy. And the 0.21 really just represents kind of a resetting to the numbers that we saw immediately pre-pandemic, and either selection would get us above the floor. The difference being, you said about somewhere
247 million
yeah,
difference.
just shy of $250 million. Other comments or questions?
Chairman, I would like to thank Governor Abbott and the legislature for taking action to appropriate funds to shore up the unemployment compensation fund. This impactful piece of legislation will help support Texas economy and ensure we can get workers back to work quickly. And let me tell you, both the options are actually really good. I tend to sway towards the comment that Commissioner Demerson said. I think that's one we were working with. But again, they're both good options. They both take us above the floor, which is good. So I just wanted to make that note.
What percentage increase is that if we're looking at 0.44 versus 0.21 or 0.20 about?
So the current replenishment tax rate, I think, is what we set as the 2020 level of the point. Well, it's 0.18 because of the obligation assessment. So 0.44 would be a little over, in a sense, doubling it, is how you get to the 200. I mean, for every 0.1%, you'll collect about $100 million. So that's how you get to the
40% or so increase. So, okay. All right. Yeah.
So it is an increase, but it is not out of the realm of what we've seen in the last 5 years or so of where the rate could go.
It is an increase. Okay.
Tell me about your rate setting algorithm. Like, what are you considering when you're, so you say you're saying that 0.44 would be the rate that would be sort of indicative of no COVID effects. That would be the calculation. What's involved in that calculation?
So the replenishment tax basically takes half of the non-effective charges, all the non-effective charges, and you divide that by the, I believe, the total taxable wages. And that's how you get the replenishment tax rate. So in my calculation, what I've done is identify the total non-effective charges and then the subset of COVID non-charges from that, and then just subtracted those from the numerator is how you get to the 0.44.
And do we suspect that perhaps people didn't report what in fact were COVID-related issues, that they didn't report them as COVID-related issues? So we're still showing some non-effective charges as something other than COVID, even though it probably was as a result of the pandemic.
Correct. I think, well, so when a claim comes in, it's identified as COVID, but it may not be adjudicated as COVID. And so what we're talking about is those that have been adjudicated as a COVID non-charge. And somebody can say, I got laid off because of COVID, but as it goes through the adjudication process, the UI claim staff may determine, no, it wasn't a COVID charge. And so it doesn't get that protection from the non-charge.
Mhm. Other comments or questions?
None here. Healthy conversation, that's for sure.
No.
Yeah. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion in accordance with the authority granted by the Texas Labor Code, Section 204.067. I move that the Texas Workforce Commission set the replenishment tax rate for 2022 at 0.20%.
Is that the entire motion?
That's a motion for the replenishment
Okay,
tax.
I would agree to that.
Agreed.
Okay. Then so I'll move on from the replenishment tax to the deficit tax rate and make a motion in that regard. In accordance with the authority granted by the Texas Labor Code, Section 204.067, I move that the Texas Workforce Commission adjust the deficit tax rate for 2022 to 0.0%.
Could you repeat that again on the deficit tax?
Deficit tax rate for 2022 to 0.00%.
Okay.
I'm good with that. I would agree.
I have a question. So your motion, the one we just agreed to, would set the replenishment tax rate at
20.
0.20%.
Mhm.
And then your current motion would not have a
Deficit tax.
Deficit tax.
deficit tax to it.
That's correct.
What happens if we collect the deficit tax, but we don't need it for the interest payments?
So the deficit tax is really to bring the trust fund to the floor.
Mhm.
And because of SB 8,
Don't need it.
So really.
we were
it's just-
technically
it's just-
below the floor.
Yeah.
It's really a technicality for the most part. We were below the floor on October 1st. So I think it's safer for the commission to actually set the rate to 0.
Got it. I hear you.
Mhm.
All right, I agree.
Okay. And lastly, the unemployment, the obligation assessment rate in accordance with requirements of Texas Labor Code, Section 203.105 and Texas Workforce Commission Rule 40, TAC Section 815.132. I move that the Texas Workforce Commission set the unemployment obligation assessment rate for 2022 at 0.01%.
I would agree with that.
And if we don't have interest payments,
Then any funds that we collect from the obligation assessment will revert back to the trust fund once we don't have any interest that's payable.
agreed.
And at the most, we'll probably need a few days, but it's better to have
Got
the
it.
funds available than
I
not.
agree with the motion also.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes my motions on.
I'm
the,
okay with all of them.
Yep, good. Thank you.
You okay, Chris? We okay?
I think we're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
You can sleep now? Check in the mail?
This is item 9, fiscal year 2022 internal audit plan.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. For the record, Ashley Soggville, Internal Audit. Today, I'm here to present the fiscal year 2022 audit plan for your consideration and approval. In your materials, you'll find the proposed audit projects as briefed with your offices, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
None here, Chairman.
Comments or questions?
And Ashley, I saw the 2022 audit plan that's presented here. It's a number of items here. Are we trying to complete all of these in the 1-year timeframe or?
We always plan to have a few rollovers.
Okay,
But we're trying to minimize the number of.
okay, good. All right, thank you. That's it.
Motion?
Chairman, I move that we approve the fiscal year 2022 audit plan as presented.
Second,
I'm in agreement.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. This is item 10, AEL Advisory Committee.
Good morning, Chair Daniel, Commissioner Alvarez, Commissioner Dimerson, and Mr. Townsend. For the record, Mahalia Baldini, Workforce Development Division, Adult Education and Literacy. Texas Labor Code, Chapter 315.005, and the Texas Administrative Code, Rule Chapter 805.43, require that the Texas Workforce Commission establish an Adult Education and Literacy Advisory Committee. The advisory committee must not be composed of more than 9 members and must include at least 1 business representative as well as 1 workforce board representative. Currently, we have 1 committee member's term that ended in June of 2021, and the terms of 6 other committee members that end in December of 2021, as shown in Table 1 of your resource materials, providing a total of 7 vacancies for December of 2021. At this time, staff seeks direction on reappointing Diana Contreras, representing the business community, and also to serve on the advisory committee for an additional 2-year term. We are also requesting the appointment of 2 new members, Janine Maldonado, who will be representing the board, and Steve Banta, representing literacy nonprofit organizations. Each of these terms will expire in December of 2023. That concludes my remarks, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Comments or questions?
None here, Chairman.
Smiley, so that's 3 out of the 7. You're going to bring forth others at some point in the future.
Yes, the plan right now, so if these 3 go forward today and are approved, that'll give us a total of 5 currently on the committee. That'll leave us a total of 4 vacancies that we'll be looking to fill in the spring.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a motion?
Chairman, I move that we reappoint Diana Contreras for an additional 2-year term and appoint Janine Maldonado and Steve Banta to serve 2-year terms on the Adult Education Literacy Advisory Committee.
Second.
We're unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mahali, before you go, what does Steve Banta do? Is he work for IBM or Texas Instruments?
He actually is, maybe in his former life, he's actually the executive director of Literacy Texas.
Okay, thank you.
This is item 11, HSC subsidy voucher distribution for FY 2022.
And I'm back. Good morning, Commissioners. Mr. Townsend, again, for the record, Mahalia Baldini with Adult Education and Literacy, Workforce Development Division. The Texas Education Code, Section 48.302, as enacted by House Bill 3 of the 86th Texas Legislature regular session, and amended by House Bill 3 1525 of the 87th Texas Legislature regular session, requires that the Texas Education Agency enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Texas Workforce Commission when transferring funds to subsidize the cost of a high school equivalency exam for individuals 21 years of age or older. On November 1st of 2021, TEA and TWC entered into an interagency contract, which enabled TEA to transfer $750,000 to TWC for the program during this current fiscal year and the 2022-2023 biennium. At this time, staff seeks direction on implementing a high school equivalency subsidy program as authorized under the Texas Education Code with the following. First, approving an initial allotment of the high school equivalency vouchers to AEL grant recipients, as well as Texas Tech University and the University of Texas at Austin, which are our virtual provider programs. You can see that shown in your tables 1 and 2 in your notebook materials. And then secondly, we are requesting that we're approving the plan described in the discussion paper that includes actually 2 things. The first is that it allows staff to distribute remaining vouchers in this fiscal year to ensure efficient usage of the vouchers based on the outlined criteria provided in your materials. And then secondly, the plan also allows grantees and providers to develop local policies to distribute vouchers to individuals who are not current or former AEL participants per the Texas Administrative Code. That concludes my remarks, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Comments or questions?
None here, Chairman.
So the first tranche would be the 350 or 375, I believe. And then the other part of the 750, what are the plans for that?
That is going to be, that is part of the plan that we're asking for the second item in the second motion. And what we are essentially requesting is that the commission provide staff the authority to monitor this on a monthly basis. As those grantees get to 70% of their kind of expenditures of their vouchers, they can then request additional vouchers from TWC, and we will provide them as they are needed
Thank you.
at the local level.
Is there a motion?
Chairman, I move that we approve the initial allotment of HSE vouchers as outlined in Table 1 and 2, allow staff to distribute remaining vouchers in fiscal year 22, and approve allowing grant recipients to develop local policies related to distribution of vouchers to individuals who are not current or formal AEL participants as discussed.
Second.
Moved and seconded. We're unanimous.
Thank you, commissioners. Have a good holiday.
I'm not showing anything under agenda item 12, 13, or 14. Is that correct? Agenda item 15, board nominations.
Good morning, Commissioners and Mr. Townsend. For the record, Shonta Williams with the Workforce Development Division. And for consideration this morning, we have Workforce Board nominations for Brazos Valley, Cameron County, North Central Texas, and Texoma. Staff seeks direction on the presented nominees, and I'm here to answer any questions you have.
Any comments or questions?
None here.
None here.
Is there a motion?
I move that we approve board nominees for Brazos Valley, Cameron County, North Central Texas, and Texoma.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, and we're unanimous. Thank you. We have nothing under agenda item 16. Is there a legislative report today? It appears so. You should have walk-up music so we know when you're coming up here. You can select it. Subject to the approval of the commission.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, and Mr. Townsend. For the record, Michael Brick, Governmental Relations. Last Friday, the U.S. House passed H.R. 5376, which is the Build Back Better Act. Breakdown of the funding relevant to TWC proposed in the legislation has been provided to your offices, and the bill now goes to the U.S. Senate for their consideration. Also, a reminder that the federal government is currently funded till December 3rd of this year. And after that point, if there's no action by Congress, funding will expire. Concludes my remarks, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Any comments or questions?
None here, Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, sir.
Mr. Townsend.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. Don't have an executive director's report, but I did just want to wish each of you and our entire TWC family a safe and happy Thanksgiving holiday.
Well, thank you very much. The same to you. This is a good opportunity to get stuff off your chest if there's anything you'd like to say.
Do it, Randy. Do it.
I'm just fine.
Mr. Nelson uses it as an opportunity to get stuff off
I've
his
watched
chest.
him.
You've watched him. Randy, thank you so much. And in keeping with that, yes, some folks may be traveling, other folks may be spending time at home. Whatever it is you're doing, please be safe and healthy, and hopefully take a little bit of time off and recharge your batteries a little bit. We've got an outstanding December coming up, and so Thanksgiving's a good rest for that while we charge right into that. Thank you very much. Is there any other order of business to come before the commission?
No, I just wanted to wish everybody happy holidays and be safe on your travels. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah, just two quick things. Just to, again, commend the staff and on the conference last week. Amazing conference. First time we were able to get back in person, and I think folks were excited about that. So Julie and team, good job there. And also just wishing everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Be safe and careful.
Absolutely. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Chairman, I move that we adjourn.
I second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn, and we're adjourned.